Board games are many, many things. They can be adventurous or intriguing, they can be scary, they can be funny. All themes are meant to evoke a certain amount of adrenaline or deep thought and strategy, exercising different parts of your brain. One emotion that is appropriately left off to the side to wallow all alone is sadness. It's a weird, inside-out emotional drama where sadness is even less welcome than before, and it's really not going to wreck your experience to play without it. The game Ducklings from Deckhead Games takes that gaming neglected emotion and forces it into the spotlight. The game pits two teams of two against each other, more in a race for survival than an all-out brawl. The teams take on the roles of parents to three adorable, fragile, and potentially doomed ducklings. Depending on the length of the game, a certain number of cards are placed face down on the table to act as the board. The parent ducks will move along this built path in an attempt to get to the opposite side safely. Each team starts at opposing ends. On each player's turn, they roll a movement die and advance that many spaces, or cards in this instance. If the card they land on hasn't already been flipped face up, then something happens, and more often than not, that thing that happens is bad. You see, the parents' safety and health are not an element in this game. What matters is your babies. The little ducklings all have unique art, names, and flavor text. They also each have their own very useful one-time ability. An event happens and the parents must choose which ducklings to divvy out wound tokens to. It's this horrible mitigation aspect that only intensifies when one of your ducklings takes 3 wounds and is flipped over to reveal a tiny obituary about their personality. In the cruelty of nature, however, with less ducklings means more speed. As your children die, you advance to a higher type of movement die. When one team reaches their new home, the other starts taking wounds rapidly because now winter's begun. The family with the most ducklings alive at the end of the game wins. Ducklings is a game that touts itself as an emotional experience. As such, it goes in loaded with an emotional agenda. That's not unusual for board games. We're constantly being spoon-fed fear, adventure, and humor. It's just that sadness is a different flavor, and so we've yet to see it fail or succeed as widely as these other emotions. Because of this, it's currently sitting in a class all by itself. Is it successful in the goal of making me feel sad? Sometimes yes, and sometimes no. The problem with a game that's A, about animals, and 2, setting out to make you feel a certain way, is that it's going to boil down to who you're playing it with, and if they'll give it a fair shake. Mentioning it to someone that enjoys duck hunting, I got a chuckle and they said they were eager to put dinner on the table. I then pointed out that this was not the objective of the game, and we played something else. Being told in the get-go that you're going to feel a particular uncomfortable emotion is equal parts intriguing and off-putting. No one particularly likes feeling sad. It doesn't have the adrenaline that fear brings or the elation that adventure has. Ducklings is heavy-handed in its goal. The art foreboding with dimly lit streets that you're certain will bring about cars to kill your darlings. The flavor text in particular is brilliant at times and uncomfortably overly sappy at others. Then there's the matter of being a roll and move. Each turn, players roll a single die and move up to the amount of spaces, not needing to use the full amount. And that's important primarily because stepping on a space that's already flipped means that there's no harm done to your darlings. The variability in decision-making will be boring unless you get pretty creative with how you set the game up. It largely relies on a decent setup to be immersive. The first playthrough we had a bunch of side paths set up and one path that made a complete beeline to the other end of the board. This is easily remedied by being more creative than I am. The variable setup is a really cool feature of this game. It makes for tougher decisions as landing on the same space as the other family may be a quicker route, but it will also earn you a wound token. Taking the longer way may be the better bet, but if you're towing all 3 of your ducklings, you're still only rolling a 4-sided die. The art, as I said, is foreboding, but not in a corny, over-the-top, dark way. It's beautiful and dangerous. Maybe not to humans, but certainly to small animals moving their entire lives. It's stunning, and at the same time somber. The art sets the tone even more so than the gameplay. You're not going to get the strategic depth that you might crave, but with the simple mechanisms it becomes easier to engross yourself in the setting. If you allow it to, this game will usher in an interesting and underutilized experience. And knowing the weight of the game before going into it helps at any point, but more importantly here is knowing the type of game this is. It's light, sure, but what it lacks for in mechanisms, it shoots to more than atone for an experience. The 2 vs 2 team thing is a difficult number to play with, but then again, this isn't a game you're going to want to play all the time. What a weird little niche this is, and it's one that I'm glad to have played, and one that stands out as something just a tiny bit different in the vast sea of the ever-growing board and card game market.